Alright, Mumonkan Part 3. So tonight I'm going to be talking about the third of the koans out of this collection, the Gateless Barrier, Gateless Gate Mumonkan, which is Gutei raises a finger. As with previous times we've done this, I will read through the koan, the commentary, and the verse that Mumon put on this. Just one time I'll read it through, then I'll provide a little bit of editorial comment, and I'll work through it again, editorializing as we go, and then when I'm done we will pause. I will stop talking, stop recording, and we will just talk about it together. So here we go. Gutei raises a finger. Master Gutei, whenever he was questioned, just stuck up one finger. At one time he had a young attendant whom a visitor asked, "What is the Zen your master is teaching?" The boy also stuck up one finger. Hearing of this, Gutei cut off the boy's finger with a knife. As the boy ran out screaming with pain, Gutei called to him. When the boy turned his head, Gutei stuck up his finger, and the boy was suddenly enlightened. When Gutei was about to die, he said to the assembled monks, "I attained Tenryu Zen of one finger. I used it all through my life, but could not exhaust it." When he had finished saying this, he died. So that's the koan. The commentary, Mumon's commentary. So he collected he found all these koans, and he wrote a brief commentary on each of them, and then a poem to kind of summarize it. So the commentary: the satori of Gutei and of the boy attendant are not in the finger. If you really see through this, Tenryu, Gutei, the boy, and you yourself are all run through with one skewer. And the poem: Gutei made a fool of old Tenryu. With a sharp knife he chastised the boy. Korei raised his hand with no effort, and lo, the great ridge of Mount Ka was split in two. What on earth? I don't see any looks of enlightenment appearing on the screen or in the room here. So, all right. So, the koan. First off, this koan appears in two other collections, the two other classic collections. The Hekigan Roku, the Blue Cliff Record, and the Book of Serenity. In each of those, though, it is just this first line. Master Gutei, whenever he was questioned, just stuck up one finger. That is it. That's all that appears. In this, the earlier one, there's these other two chunks that appear, which are the boy who does this and has his finger cut off, and then the paragraph about being about to die. So, this, in the Zen tradition, is called grandmotherly kindness. He is really offering a big helping hand, because the koan is all there in that first line. These other two paragraphs really offer they're designed to offer an excessive amount of help to us. So we'll talk through each of those three chunks, and hopefully they will offer us some excessive help. First off, background story. Where does this come from? So Gutei, he was a hermit at the time. He was living in like his cave or his hut out in the middle of nowhere, meditating and eating plants and drinking water and watching the rain and the trees and the leaves and all the rest. And a nun comes wandering by. It's late in the evening. She comes wandering by and she wanders in, and she's kind of brusque. She just it's a very brief, sort of wanders around him, walks around, circumambulates him, doesn't take her hat off, and isn't really very polite. And she says, he says, "So it's getting late. Why don't you stay?" She says, "I'll stay if you give me one word of Zen." And Gutei is flabbergasted. He doesn't know what to say. What is the one word of truth that he needs to say? So she shrugs and she turns to walk off. He says, "Stay, it's dark out there." She turns and faces him and says, "If you say one word of Zen, I will stay." He can't come up with it. Can't think of what to say. That magic moment where you've got to say just that magic word to somebody and he can't think of what to say. So she leaves. And that's a big deal, of course. I mean, it's scary out there. She's walking out into the forest. There are lions and tigers and bears and snakes. She probably won't find anywhere to sleep for the night, so she's sleeping on the grass or walking. Won't have anything to eat, but off she goes. Gutei feels terrible, just terrible. He's agonizing over this, and he thinks, I'm a Zen practitioner. I need to be able to answer that kind of question. It's just like, that's what this is about. What am I doing? I need to go find a teacher. I need to start all over again. So he packs up to just get up, and in a dream a vision comes to him and says a master will be coming and visiting him. He needs to stay where he is, so he does. And about a week or two later, this guy Tenryu shows up, and so Gutei is just thrilled, and of course over this period of time he has just been boiling. It's just the pressure has been intensifying. He's already this idea of awakening, his practice is already incredibly important to him. So he's out there in the wilderness on his own, engaging in his practice with just enormous effort and energy. And this experience with this woman has really put the pressure cooker on. So he's just it's just put the pressure on. So Tenryu shows up. He says, here's the situation. What should I say? And Tenryu just does that. Raises one finger. Gutei is immediately awakened. Immediately the bottom drops out. Self and other disappear. There's just the wonder of the universe just as it is. Just suddenly sees clearly. So later he goes on and he opens a monastery and all this stuff happens. So what is this one finger? Master Gutei, whenever he was questioned, that's every time anybody asks him a question. What is Zen? What is my breakfast? Where should I go? What's this? He does that. Raises one finger. What is this one finger? Well, at a corny level, we could say, well, it's just an indication of oneness. And yeah, but that and a quarter will get you a cup of coffee. That's not, there's an indicator there, but that's not it. So there's lots of different ways of passing this. A way is there's the finger pointing at the moon. Don't get confused by the finger pointing at the moon. Well, the moon isn't the moon unless there's a finger pointing at it. The finger actually is the moon, and the moon is the finger. Utterly counterintuitive, negates everything that everybody will tell you, but in an important sense, the moon is the finger. Everything is the finger. Huayan, which is the philosophy it grew up, it emerged in China. Goodness, like 700 to 1200 CE, something like that. It's very rich philosophy, and I've heard about it as the philosophy of Zen. Zen is famously without any philosophy, although I think that's kind of a little bit disingenuous. It's the most intellectual, anti-intellectual movement I've ever come across. But Huayan is the philosophy, and Huayan is this is what Thich Nhat Hanh was heavily informed by when he talks about interbeing. Interbeing is that everything contains everything else. So there are all sorts of there's a rich philosophy around it, but there are all sorts of stories that point at this. Indra's net is an example of this. Indra's net is this mesh of crystals, all interconnected. Every crystal is reflecting every other crystal, which in turn is reflecting every other crystal. So every crystal contains every crystal. Every crystal is within every other crystal. Every crystal contains and is the entire universe. There is one of the Huayan masters, when he was asked by a princess to show her how all this works, the philosophy, the meaning of life, the universe, and everything. And he goes into a room and he gets a bunch of mirrors and he lines the mirrors up in a circle. And he gets her to stand in the mirror, the middle. And of course, she can see herself going off into eternity in every direction, because every mirror is reflecting every other mirror. She is contained everywhere. This is a way of looking at the finger. Did he raise? He just raised the finger. Did he raise the same finger? And a Zen master would say, if you say yes, I'll hit you 100 times. If you say no, I'll hit you 100 times. Did he raise the same finger? You can't step into the same stream twice. But actually, kind of is the same stream you're stepping into. Again, yes, no. If you say yes, I'll hit you 100 times. If you say no, I'll hit you 100 times. So to see the universe, to see that, for that breakthrough, to have the recognition, the realization of what that finger is, it's not about the finger. That finger is pointing at this and is this truth. In the same way we talked about before, the koan isn't just a container to capture this message. You become the koan. You become the story. You become the finger. And that happens because you become so immersed in the question. In this case, Gutei was so immersed in what should I say, that just broke everything open. It's tough to give everyday analogies, but I'll try. One of my favorites is being in a room when a baby's born. Now, as a man who was in the room when my wife gave birth, the universe appeared out of the womb. Just suddenly there it was, and it cried. I can't imagine what it would be like to be a mother giving birth to a child, and to have this child come out and hold this child. My hair's standing up on end as I say this. That's the universe. You've been holding this thing in you for 9 months. You've just gone through this excruciating pain. And you've been... waiting isn't right. Waiting isn't what it is, but there's just this sort of timeless expectation that's sitting there, and suddenly, wah, and there's the universe. That's the finger. So the second chunk of this. At one time, he had a young attendant whom a visitor asked, "What is the Zen your master is teaching?" The boy also stuck up one finger. So the boy doing that, the boy doesn't get it. This is like another one of my favourite stories of the abbot who sees the two monks in the meditation hall lighting candles and burning incense, and he just gets his broom and sweeps them out. Because they're just going through the motions. They think that the act is important, but it's not the act that's important. It's the total immersion that's important. So later in the day, or a couple of days later, the two monks see the abbot in there doing it, and they say, "Boss, what's going on? You told us not to do this." And he said, "This is just the way I practice my devotions." Totally different. The young man doing this is totally different than Gutei doing this. Hearing of this, Gutei cut off the boy's finger with a knife. Doesn't get it. As the boy ran out screaming with pain, Gutei called to him, and when the boy turned his head, Gutei stuck up one finger, and the boy was suddenly enlightened. There are a whole bunch of these stories coming out of Zen where they're on the edge, they're fragile, they're in this place where they're working for their breakthroughs and they're just heavily engaged in their practice in these liminal spaces, and somebody will slam a door on their foot, or the geese fly over the horizon, and when they say the geese are gone, somebody tweaks their nose, or they hear the sound of a pebble hitting a bamboo. All these moments that just break things open when you're in that vulnerable place. The pain. There's a spiritual truth which is not an easy truth, but it is a truth, which is, from a spiritual perspective, pain is an incredible gift. Pain forces us to be utterly present. Everything else is gone. We are just here, totally present. And pain dissolves time. There's only now. It's an enormous gift. This boy was in that gift, totally vulnerable to being broken open. So that's what happened there. When Gutei was about to die, he said to the assembled monks, "I attained Tenryo Zen of one finger. I woke up to this truth. I used it all through my life." There's a thing about having the understanding but not the use of it. He had the use of it. So if the understanding would be, you wake up and you're kind of just in awe. There's a story, I can't remember the name of the person, but this is a story I heard one time, contemporary story. There was an Australian woman who had this deep awakening experience, and she was just sitting there for a couple of days, and people were sitting and chatting with her, and she was just kind of non-responsive. After 2 or 3 days, she said, "I think it wants a cup of tea now." Right? So to have the use of it is to be able to have the cup of tea and to look around the room and see somebody else needs a cup of tea. I used it all through my life, but could not exhaust it. How can you exhaust it? You can't. And when he finished saying this, he died. So Mumon's commentary, the Satori of Gutei. Satori is is the Japanese Zen word for these deep, profound awakening experiences, and they generally they're not the full awakening. They don't last. You have the Satori, and then you come back into the relative reality of ordinary everyday life. But that gives you the peak inside the tent, and so it comes back again, and the barriers, the edges start to blur, and these two states kind of merge. The Satori of Gutei and of the boy attendant are not in the finger. If you really see through this, Tenryo, Gutei, the boy, and you yourself are all run through with one skewer. In the first one of these, he talks about you will, which is the Joshu's Mu, you'll see the masters, you'll see the Buddhas face to face, you will tangle eyebrows with the masters from the past. This is just this deep truth. There's no longer any separation. It's just, we can't talk of separation or no separation. The run through with one skewer just means this: I am the boy, I am Gutei, they are me. And yet there's still this sack of skin and bones walking around, which has this kind of sense of separateness. The poem. Gutei made a fool of old Tenryo. How do you make a fool of somebody in this sense? That's a difficult state. Made a fool of old Tenryo. I'll just leave it. It's a difficult statement. With a sharp knife, he chastised the boy. Kore raised his hand with no effort, and lo, the great ridge of Mount Ka was split in two. That refers to an old Chinese story where I think Ka was a god, and he just raised his hand to create a chasm in the mountain so a river could run through. So there's just this effortlessness. There's, one finger is the entire universe. That's it. Okay, well, hopefully I have sowed enough confusion to be somewhat useful to you all. So I'm going to stop talking right there, and we will discuss among ourselves.